not going to hold back, but I would strongly suggest that you really engage yourself, probably in a way that you never had before as men, because this is a topic that I believe if if you can catch a few things that I'm going to talk about here tonight, it'll totally transform the way that you experience yourself, experience your relationships, the way that you even operate in whatever sphere. Well, this is a very short period of time. Normally, my communication sessions that I do, they run anything between 2 to 3 days, because and that's still not even then. People are still complaining that they need more. It's not enough. So the question is, why is it so difficult for men to talk? Why is it so difficult for men to talk? Because men communicate, but they don't talk, but they communicate. And oftentimes, because our communication is not accompanied by strong linguistic support. In other words, it's not accompanied by a language that describes, that defines what we're communicating. Often there is a disconnection between what we say and what we communicate, what we're doing. This is very, very important. Talking is an important element of communication, and talking is actually the easiest component of communication, and yet it is the one component that most men struggle with the most. Even though it is the easiest. Why is it easy? It is easy because of the fact that you're able to, it can be easily understood. Comprehension for language is far better than non-verbal language, non-verbal communication. And you see this, let's look at it from the time that the child is born. That is, as soon as the child is able to say mama, papa, and the child is able to sort of describe what they're saying, and they transition from communicating with sounds and with physical display, either of excitement or frustration, through breaking stuff, through crying. They're communicating something. So where the parent moves from trying to sort of figure out, is my child crying because they're hungry? Are they crying because they are hurt? Are they crying because they're upset? Are they crying because they are uncomfortable physically? They experience some kind of a physical discomfort. To the point where when the child starts to talk, parents, we get excited because now we can be able to communicate far better. I can say to my child, listen, tell me what's going on, and the child can be able to tell me exactly what's going on. And then I know what I'm supposed to do to help my child to calm down emotionally. But there's a challenge with boys. There's a point where, as boys start to know how to speak when they're younger, we start to suppress other components of their ability to communicate, such as expressing their communication through, especially the emotional discomforts, through crying. Now, crying as an expression of, hey, listen, I'm hurt, I'm feeling something uncomfortable. We say, hey, don't cry, because boys don't cry. Now, the fact of the matter is that I am still hurt. What am I supposed to do with that emotion? A girl cries, and a girl gets comforted, and the girl feels better. The boy cries, boy is told to be quiet. They take the emotion in within, and they still carry it with them. And the fact of the matter is that the longer you carry that hurt, that pain, that emotion with you, at some point, it has to come out. It's got to come out of your system, because it is not designed to stay inside of you. It is supposed to come out. It's supposed to be expressed and to flow out. Now, there's another important component of that. Then there's another part where, as we begin to grow as men, being able to speak and talking is starting to be associated with another very component that makes up who we are, and that is weakness. That if you're a man that speaks and talks a lot, you're a woman. Why are you being feminine? Why are you talking? Just get things done and be a man, man up. And so then we begin to associate this vital natural, inherent ability with something that as men we hate the most because it takes away from the framework of who we are, that is weakness. Weakness. And so we now don't stop crying, we stop talking. And we still feel, but because the feeling, the emotion cannot be expressed, we hold it in, we hold it down. And there's a point where the body has had enough. There's a point where your entire structure has had enough and can no longer be able to handle it. How do we know that? We know it because some of the stats that we're reading that I was looking at is that one of the number one causes of juvenile crime, like the young boys going to committing crime, they looked at it and they realized that quite a lot of those young guys have got poor speech development. They don't know how to speak well. And I'm going to explain to you why that is important. Because they don't know how to speak well, then they start to express themselves more physically. And they get into fights, and they beat up other kids, and they express how they feel, not through words, then they start to express how they feel rather through the one element that is celebrated for who they are, that is their physicality. That is the expression or the display of their physical strength. And this happens a lot in your societies where there isn't a lot of institutional order. In your more informal, with some difficult psychosocial conditions, as you'd see, of course, in townships and in some of the places where we come from. Other countries, other parts of the world, like America, is ghettos. Some other parts of Africa, we're talking about compounds. We're talking about the slums in India, for example. You find that the similarities as far as the juvenile detention, the percentage of the juveniles that go to jail, and then, of course, another thing that comes on at a much later stage is that men are 4 times likely to kill themselves than women. Even though, what is interesting is this, women have a high level of attempting to commit suicide, but they fail. Their success ratio is less. Men have a lesser attempt to suicide, but their success ratio is 4 times that of women. Because men know how to execute something physically and violently. So when a man is going to kill himself, more likely they're going to succeed. And also, it's almost like it's also in a way of expressing their strength. And communication, the ability or the inability to speak, has a big role to play. So today, guys, we're not going to be talking about the Bible, but we're going to be talking about our own personal experiences and then looking at how through God we can learn to communicate. That we can understand actually the first thing that human beings got to know about God was that God communicates. That was the first thing that a human being experienced from God. That's the first thing that the entire creation experienced of God, was that God spoke the word and everything was. He spoke and it was. And then the first thing that he did with Adam was not to give Adam a hug. We don't know. Okay, in terms of the Bible doesn't say, well, God created Adam and then God gave him a hug. But what we learn is that God created Adam and God spoke to Adam. He said some things to Adam. And then after Eve was born, the Bible tells us that God used to come in the cool of the day to come and sit down and communicate with Adam and Eve. So there's absolutely nowhere in the Bible that we can justify this tragic idea that being a man means you talk less. The entire Bible has been written by God, yes? God was talking through men all the time. So where does the idea that being a man means that we don't talk come from? I think I know where it comes from. I think it comes from, it can only come from a source or a place that knows the power of what communication is. The power of words. And it can only come from Satan. It can only come from the enemy. The enemy understands the power of words. From the very beginning, he understood the power of words. And he continues even today to confuse language so that we would be confused. And a man that doesn't know, a human being that doesn't know how to speak, to talk well, what do they look like? Have you ever, and not in a negative sense, but have you ever seen like human beings that are not very cognitively well developed, that don't know how to speak very well? What is one of the things that you see? How do they display themselves? They display what? What are some of the things that people like that display? Violence. They display violence. What else? Aggression.
Aggressive dominance.
Yeah.
Territorial.
They protect themselves. And how do they do that? They do that through the display of aggression. And what else? When you see, do they look like they're normal? When you look at them in the face, do they look normal? There's a little confusion. It's quite a lot of confusion. And when they struggle to process cognitively what's going on around them, and as they try maybe to formulate words and maybe they struggle, or maybe they try to explain whatever they're going through and they cannot do that, and then they get frustrated and they start banging stuff. So, a bit extreme, but I'm giving you that image because I'm trying to show you that as a man, if you don't at some point in your life learn how to communicate, that becomes the outcome of your life. You're barking orders like a crazy person in the house to the kids, and the kids are freaking out and afraid of you. And when you're angry, it's like dead silence in the house. Even the flies know it's time to go. And the cockroaches don't come to the kitchen because it's bad. That guy's angry guy, he's gonna kill us. You see that cockroach over there, you're like, and you crush that thing like it didn't even exist. So, men, talking is vital for our functionality. What is functionality again? Functionality is the process or is the ability to arrange whatever you do, all of your activities, whatever you do, to be able to achieve the outcomes that you want. That's what function is. When we say something is functional, is that when you press, let's say, let's take for example the cell phone right here. If I'm pressing the call button and it doesn't do that, then it's dysfunctioning, yes? But if I press it and it does exactly what I wanted to do, then it's functional because then my activities lead to the outcome that I'm trying to achieve. Similarly, if I'm trying to grab this cup of coffee to drink like this, and for some reason, my hand is not able, my finger is not able to actually carry out the instructions from my brain, and I'm gonna start realizing I am dysfunctioning. Something is not happening. There is a disconnection of some sort. There is a miscommunication of some sort that is happening between my brain and the rest of my body. Then I know that I need to do something about it. And honestly, poor communication is precisely that. An inability to communicate well does not stop you from thinking. It doesn't stop you from feeling. It doesn't stop you from desiring or wanting to be. But what it does do is that it stops you from being able to express that into your words and then being able to transfer that from what you're thinking into the atmosphere. And so that basically means it also leaves you disconnected to your environment and the people around you. And so if it so happens that you are a father who's supposed to be a leader, if it so happens that you are a leader at work who's supposed to be leading a group of people to do whatever task you're supposed to do at work, you're not able to transfer your thoughts to those who depend on you for leadership and for guidance, for instruction, for those who need you for lessons, for teaching, for education. You're not able to express that. And that basically means that there's a very strong component of who you are as a human being that goes missing from any sphere of existence that you're a part of. And consequently, whatever environment that you find yourself in becomes poor. Because the one element that everybody can more likely understand than anything else, and that is words, that is language, that is linguistic ability, you don't have it as well as you should. Therefore, your environment is poor. There's a reason why, even in business, people who communicate are by far the highest paid people. Yeah. Among those are the ones that we hate the most. Who are those people that make a lot of money from the way they speak? They get to be on top of most of societal leadership structures. Who are they?
Politicians.
Politicians. Yes, sir. I would say give that man a cup of coffee, but he already has one, so it's okay. Politicians, they rise to the highest echelons of society because of what they're able to say. Even the most incredible solutions in the world, unless they find a tool or vehicle that is able to communicate what it is, it'll never see the light of day. It won't ever see the light of day. There are many people who are many men who are sitting on a lot of incredible ideas, but we will never know because they never said anything about them. Dr. Miles Monroe, God bless his soul, he's passed on now, but he says that the richest place in the world is the graveyard. Because many died they died with gold mines with them. Inside of them, they never got to say them out. A lot of times, even now, especially in this day and age, where communication is becoming such an important part of the societal harmony, a lot of men are beginning to miss out on opportunities. This is part of the reason why men are struggling to find work today. Because a lot of jobs that exist in the world that used to need our physical labor are being phased out. They're being machines are taking care of them. Artificial intelligence is taking over a very that part of the world of life where we used to express ourselves, build our significance, build our value, and become celebrated for our contribution to society. But now we're not able any longer to do that. Why? Because machines are taking care of the stuff. Machines are taking care of them. Machines are beginning to build houses now. Do you know that there are a lot of countries now that have pre-designed houses? They set it up, the entire machine will put up the whole house. There won't be one human being that's involved in setting that up. Printing, 3D printing. They do 3D printing. They 3D print a house. What does that mean for us men who find our significance with our physical labor? What happens to our ability to be paid correctly? So the one thing I like about being in the communication business is that nothing beats a live interaction. Yes, you can put a video up here and the video can tell you the same thing that I'm doing, but a video does not do what I do. The video is not alive. The video does not emit energy. It doesn't emit emotion. It does not think and say, okay, how can I make a joke about Chris? The video doesn't do that. But a human being that communicates well knows how to take all of this in and process it and create an incredible experience. And when we're good communicators, we are able to change environments just like that. You're able to step into a crazy, confusing situation and just like that, make things work. So when you're a man and you're still insisting and holding on to the idea that I'm a man, I don't talk, I'm quiet. The only time I open my mouth is just to make the atmosphere smell nice. Because my mouth has been closed for so long, it smells. And I'm opening it up like, woo, oh. Daddy's mouth is like, ha, 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 ha. Because daddy doesn't talk so much. It's even worse when you're a smoker and a drinker. Woo. Wow, that's like a... Yeah, we're not going to say which word that is. So, do we understand? Okay. Now, I'm going to quickly, for the next 10 minutes, just take you through a very simple model that I want you to just, entertain or just to go through with me. Actually, not even really. Let me just start. Let me be creative. Let me show you what happens when you learn how to communicate. I'm not going to use any models. I'm going to create a model of communication for you right now. It's not any way to brag or to show off, but it's just to show you the power of being able to communicate. The first question that we're going to ask ourselves, and this is what I like about being a communicator, learning to communicate helps you to ask the right questions. The reason why so many people struggle a lot of times to process the environment around them is that also they don't know how to ask questions. And part of the reason why we don't know how to ask questions as men is because we're driven by one thing and one thing only, and that is to prove our worth and our significance. And you know what? It makes a lot of sense sometimes because, we are judged so much for our ability to perform, yes? Men are judged extremely on their performance. We're judged for our ability to, to show off our strength, whether it be through whatever work that we're doing. How else do we measure performance? Based on the positions that we hold in society. Not many people, it's changing a bit, but in many parts of the world, a woman is not going to brag and be celebrated for the kind of work that they do. Matter of fact, sometimes it becomes a point of contention for a woman. But a man, my husband is a manager. What does he manage? Well, he's in a spaza shop, but he's a manager. As long as he's a manager, it doesn't matter that he's managing ants. He's a manager. Okay, and so my husband is a doctor. Oh, my husband is a businessman. What does he do? Well, he sells cookies on the side of the road. He's a businessman. Or he's an entrepreneur these days. Entrepreneurship. Anything's entrepreneurship these days. Okay, so men get judged for their performance. And as a result, a big part of what frames what we think we should contribute, and because when we contribute, oftentimes we get feedback that says, listen, you're valuable. Your contribution is valuable. Why? Because you worked and you were able to bring the money at home, provide for us, the kids have gone to school, you've done a great job of provision, of providing for your family, yes? And so then success is an important part of how men get judged. So we get judged for the jobs that we do, especially the actual position of influence that job brings. And then we get judged for success. Do we have the proof, which is what? Mashankura, money, mula, chelt. We get judged for that. Right. My husband is a criminal, but he's got money, so the woman looks away. Society looks away. As long as the gangster has the money, and every now and then he splashes on the community and does a Christmas party for the kids. So we get protected and we get celebrated, we get honored for our ability to what? To provide. So our success is measured against us. And then there's the issue of intelligence. Our intelligence, of course, is always looked at in terms of what we can do. Yes, the solutions and innovations that we can come up with. But you know that one of the most important ways that men get judged for how men's intelligence is determined. What is that? How do you know what's that? Exactly, it's communicating, talking.
Grammar, like expression.
More than just expression, but articulating critical thinking.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we like authors. That's why we're celebrating the Aristotles of this world, the Plato of this world. You know, that's why we're celebrating politicians. That's why we're celebrating leaders in the world. And we'll mention leaders in the world, and we'll mention the things that they've said because they are a revelation of an expression of their intelligence. But the challenge is that when you're a man and you do have something intelligent to say, but you don't know how to say it, it's a problem. Because then your speech betrays what's in your brain. And then we want you to shut up instead of speaking. Like, oh, some men should just be quiet and not say a thing. You're one of those guys that we cringe. We cringe when you have to say something like, oh, what's he going to say now? You know, so, all right. So the question is, what do let's think of it this way. We communicate from. That is the first point. The from part comes first. We communicate from our history. What does that comprise of? It comprises of our experiences. It comprises of our location, where we were born, where we were raised, where we've been. We communicate from our position. Children communicate from being children, being adults, and we also communicate from our responsibility, position of responsibility. This position of responsibility, this one here reflects, we can say, maturity. And then here it's performance or function. Okay, so responsibility. We communicate from, let's say, whatever position. Are you a manager? You're going to communicate from that. Are you a pastor? Communicating from that. Are you a politician? You're going to communicate from that. Are you a business person? You're going to communicate from that. Are you a father? Are you a mother? That's a position of responsibility. That is your contribution to society. All right, we're communicating from these many different positions. We also communicate from our knowledge. What do we know about the subject matter that we're talking about? The more you know, the easier it is for you to be able to communicate. Okay, this is where we communicate from this, and then the question is, what do we communicate with? Just write that down before I erase it. What do we communicate with? This is what builds our communication structure as men. Okay, we must erase this. We're going to communicate with now. And after this, we're going to take a break and I'll just talk a little bit about it and I'll just close it off and then we'll have one last moment of discussion or engagement. Okay. We also communicate with. Okay. One other thing that I forgot to mention, which I kind of makes it a bit longer, but I'm going to mention it anyway. We also communicate from our human limitations. We communicate from, and we also communicate with our human limitations. Human limitations. Okay, which kind of connects with what I said before. Human limitations, there are 5 main ones. The first one is the fact that I'm a limited being. I'm here, right here in front here. I'm limited. I've got my height, I've got my size. Well, look, to some of you I may look like a giant, but next to Chris, I look like a little tsetse fly. Right? Because Chris is bigger than me. Okay? And some of you may think, oh wow, this guy is decent looking until I stand next to Patha with all of this grooming and then I look like a back of a tree. So we are limited, our substance is limited. And so if I'm talking about, for example, a certain subject matter, let's say we're talking about exercising. I have a certain knowledge of exercises. So I will probably talk with a bit more authority than most people here in the room because I have background in that, in that knowledge, in that particular field. But if I start asking questions about Mozambique, somebody here from Mozambique will know, or Malawi, then they will know a bit better they'll have more authority on how to communicate about what's going on out there in Mozambique. Okay, so substance, and then there's the issue of location. Where do you come from? Because that determines also something else, which is part of our communication. It determines our vocabulary. We communicate with our vocabulary. This is a big part. Guys, oh my goodness, this is so huge. One of the reasons why men are such poor communicators is because men also have poor vocabulary. And part of the reason why certain men have poor vocabulary is because a lot of men don't like to read. Men do not like to read. And if you don't like to read, you are disadvantaging yourself as a communicator. Because what reading does is that it gives you an opportunity to integrate into your vocabulary somebody else's life experiences. And now all of a sudden, this person is able to describe to you some of the things that you've been having great difficulty to understand. And this is constantly what I find even when I'm doing these courses. And people always say to me, you've been able to help me to communicate something I've been struggling to communicate for the last 10 years. All of a sudden, some people are beginning to understand what they're feeling. Now, the challenge with men not liking to talk, especially not liking to be in part of conversations, because we're talking emotions. And emotions is an important component of a human being, right? But unfortunately, emotions are associated so many times with femininity, which is one of the dominant trends in women. Then men just start thinking, well, talking about emotions and connecting with emotions, then it means that you are a woman. But what we don't often realize is that emotions have their own language, which helps us to understand the difficulties that we are going through in life. Now, emotions in themselves, they're not a primary leading intellectual structure. They're not a leading our minds are the brain. The mind connected to the brain, that is your leading intellectual structure, which what we as men take pride so much in having more than women. The challenge is that we're missing a very important component of that, of our intelligence structure. Part of it is emotions. Emotions are responsive to what we're thinking. Emotions are responsive to what we experience physically. They're always an after effect. Does that make sense? You start to have even emotional feelings about physical experience only after the physical experience. after you've gotten hurt, after you've been slapped, after you've fallen on the ground, after you've experienced difficulty of working, only then do you start to have the emotional response to that particular event that has taken place. And when somebody's maybe is insulting you and you can sense it in their face and in their language, then you have an emotional response. And the emotional response will often be what you're thinking about whatever is taking place. One of the ways that you respond, or how you respond to what you're thinking, whether you're thinking something is fun, then you're going to have those comfortable emotional response, like, hey, I'm feeling good, I'm happy. But this is a problem though. If you're a man, you're not supposed to be happy, so I'm happy inside. My child has done well at school. Well, I'm proud inside. I'm not going to tell him how proud I am. I'm proud inside. Like, what a tragic way to live. Unfortunately, this is what happens. And for as long as we're not able to allow ourselves to feel, we won't even know why we're dysfunctioning. Because the emotional response oftentimes would reflect whether what we're thinking is actually right or wrong. Because of, again, so many of us men being put against each other, a lot of men are jealous of each other. We think that women are jealous with each other. Women are far less jealous of each other than men are. It's just that women express it. That's why we think that women are more jealous than men. No, it's not. Women, because they're able to go process and say, oh, mganami, yo, the thing that you're wearing is so nice, Azi, I'm so jealous. Women will say that. And in a way, even though they're telling so true, but they have the opportunity to process it. But a guy will be like jealous and like look at you like,
Look at this one.
He's thinking the whole crazy thing. He's thinking, I can just knock him out right now. He wouldn't even know it. Right? And then the guy says, listen, let's go do this thing together. You're like, and then you say, yeah, sure. But you know you're lying. You know you're setting up that guy for failure. You know you have no plans whatsoever to help that man. But you said it because you wanted them not to go out and look for other help. So that they can be able to struggle. And this is one of the challenges that we're having as men, is that we don't collaborate, we don't work with each other, we don't co-create together, because we are celebrated for being individuals. Our individualism is far celebrated better than our ability to actually collaborate. We are celebrated for creating alliances, powerful alliances. And there's a difference between unity and alliance. Okay, alliances is everybody still running their own kingdom. Right now they're talking about creating alliances within the political spectrum, now that there isn't a clear majority in all of these metros. And you listen to how these men talk. What are they saying?
We will never collide.
We'll never collaborate. If we collaborate with them, we have to be the ones that rule.
Yeah, I'm in charge.
We're going to be in charge. Why? Even though I've got 9%, I'm going to be in charge over somebody that has 46%. Because it's all about leveraging. Why am I bringing that up? We're bringing that up because as a part of our human limitation, then we are worried about vulnerability.
Yes.
That's why we don't like to talk, because we don't want people to see our weaknesses, because we're thinking they're going to take me on. There's a video that I watched of this other young, I can't remember his name, but I'll share his name. He speaks about men as well, African American guy that used to that went to jail at some point, but now he does martial arts, and he does martial arts for the father and the son. He runs a whole program where he teaches kids, young boys, martial arts, but he wants the fathers to be there. And there's a whole process of creating this bond between the fathers. And he says the one time when he was doing this talk with these young guys, he started to cry. And because he started to cry, and it was a very rough crowd, this young boy came at him and started to fight him because he was crying. And he thought, oh, he's showing weakness, so I'll just show him, since he's the alpha. And But he didn't know that this guy was a martial arts specialist. And he says before he knew it, he had flipped that boy on the ground and he was like pinning him down. And then he realized, oh my goodness, I'm about to kill this boy. Because he just acted, of course, from instinct. But that's the things that in that moment when he was crying, this young guy who comes from a very rough environment felt it was an opportunity for him to rise to the top. Therefore, it was time for him to go after him. And this is normally what happens. This is one of the reasons. This is the story actually behind Mzilikazi. I don't know, guys, if you guys know the history of Amazulu. Mzilikazi was the chief, captain, if you want to call him that, the commissioner, the commander of the regiment of Shaka's armies. And he started, Mzilikazi was so good with Shaka, he started then going out and conquering other surrounding communities by himself, without Shaka. And the other guys who were advisors to Shaka said, this guy is undermining you. And you're going to look like you're weak in front of your people. And if you look like you're weak, then they're going to come after you. And so when Mzilikazi found out, and Shaka didn't really want to fight with him, that's when Mzilikazi then started to leave. And then as he was leaving, of course, he started conquering other places, eventually getting to Zimbabwe. That's where you have the Mandebele people in Zimbabwe, Mandebele land. And then when the British came and fought them, and then they moved from that side, and then they moved all the way up to the other part of Zambia, towards Malawi, further up, where you find it's the same people, same Amazon people, same traditions, pretty much a similar language. Just a little bit of history for you to know. Okay? But the issue was that Shaka didn't want to appear weak. Even though he didn't want to fight Mzilikazi because he was so useful to him, he had to fight him so that he can protect and keep his throne and still appear as strong and as powerful. But we know what happened. Eventually his brother, colluded with the enemies, and then he got killed. Killed him. Anyway. Why is that important? That is important because that actually reflects pretty much how men, we are pinned against each other with this whole idea of individualism. And because of that, it's part of the reason why we don't feel safe to communicate with each other. Because we're so worried about what other men are going to say. Are they going to think that we're weak? Are they going to think that we don't have things together? We're not in control. If we start saying that I'm struggling, what other men are going to say? If you start saying I'm fearful, well, what kind of man is fearful? Men are not fearful. Men are courageous. Men are strong. Men are stoic. Men are resourceful. So we don't share our struggles. And so we struggle by ourselves, and sadly, a lot of times then die by ourselves. So this is what I want us to then think about in terms of this here. We communicate with our vocabulary, we communicate with our confidence or lack thereof. Okay, we communicate, let's say, also character. Our character either highlights, strengthens who we are, or it undermines our words. Either our character builds the currency of our words, it either builds the currency of our words, or it undermines the strength of our words. Men, character builds this. Our vocabulary also builds this. Our confidence also builds that. Our confidence is about the strong belief in who God has created us to be as men. Why has God created? God did not make a mistake by creating us. Although today, in terms of history, the world stands at odds with the man, with the history of a man, how the man has led the world through for the last couple of thousands of years. Yes, there are things like toxic masculinity and all sorts of other things where they're trying to utilize whatever it is that makes up the man. As everybody's trying to figure out what makes a man a man. But God did not make a mistake in creating us the way that He did, with the abilities that we have. And yes, it is pretty much also we communicate with our strength. Whatever the strength is, what is a woman's strength and what is a man's strength? Part of what makes up, of course, the men's strength is the fact that being physically stronger, it means that we normally do take the responsibility of protection. And to protect, it's important for those that will be trying to attack you, to try and undermine you, to know that physically you can be able to stand your ground. That is why a lot of homes that don't have men in them, they do tend to have a much higher rate of molestation for young girls and young boys, because there are no men in their homes, in those homes. That's why there tends to be high criminality, because there are no men in those environments. An environment that has weak men who are not actively visible in taking charge and ensuring that there's order in the environment will always be an environment that is vulnerable to all sorts of social ills. If you look at a girl child, more likely to be pregnant by the time that they're a teen if there's no men in the home. Young men more likely to find themselves in trouble of some sort, either drugs, either early alcohol. I know even for me growing up, I probably was exposed to alcohol by the time I was like age 8. In fact, I remember the one time I got so drunk off of my grandfather's concoction that they thought I was like sick of going to the hospital, because there were bubbles coming out of my mouth. Until my aunt was like, "Yeah, this thing is drunk." And then they left me to sleep, and then when I got up, of course, the whip was waiting for me. After I slept it all off, and then I was like, "Okay, I'm up now." They're like, "Oh, you're up now, come, we're waiting for you." And then I got a hiding of note after that. And so we communicate from our strength. And part of the strength, unfortunately, part of our strength is so much associated with aggression and with our ability to overcome, to dominate, and to be able to build and to create for others. Then we speak that way. Then we speak conquering. Then we speak dominance. Then we speak power and control. And then we go out of our way then to speak and to communicate control. But then what happens when you don't feel like you are in control as a man? What do you communicate?
Physically.
Who do you talk to? Who gives you an ear? By the way, men don't get helped for being weak. Men get followed for being strong.
Yeah.
I want you to listen to what I just said now. Men don't get helped for being weak. They get what? Followed for being strong. They become leaders. So when you are a man that is feeling a degree of weakness, where do you go for? For help. But if you are able to communicate, part of what happens is that you are able to process your thoughts. You are able to talk yourself out of your frustrations. And one of the greatest benefits of learning how to communicate as a man is that you are able to speak to God. And you are able also to hear God and to understand what God is saying. You are able to get counsel from the Holy Spirit as the Spirit is communicating to you in words of life, words of hope that can give you strength and to help you to cope. In this world that is so hostile at this particular point of a history of mankind to masculinity, which forms, for the most part, an important element of who you are as a man. We communicate with these. And then there's the question of closing. For what? Why do we communicate? What is it that we are communicating? What are we communicating? What and why? We can put them together. What are we communicating? oftentimes we communicate purpose, whatever it is that we are trying to have as an outcome. Purpose. We're communicating purpose, we're communicating goals, we're communicating visions, we're communicating plans, we're communicating the future, we're communicating what we want the outcome to be. That's what God first did when he opened his mouth. He said, let there be light, then there was light. And then he said, let there be water that separates, and then there was water. Let there be day and night, then there was all of that. And then with Adam and Eve, he sat down and he literally involved himself physically, breathed his life, and then, unlike everything else that was after God spoke to them, Adam and Eve would become through communication with God. They would go through the process of becoming through what? Communication. God spoke them into, yes, he spoke them into creation in his mind, and he created them with their hands, but they became through conversation with God. They became through conversation. God first communicated to Adam, then Adam had to communicate probably over to Eve, which was the problem. One of the reasons why the fall is blamed on Adam is because Adam still had the power to reverse Eve's actions by communicating the truth about who God is and the truth about the fruit. But he did not. And in that moment in history, a lot is revealed about the problem of quiet men. A lot of things go wrong in the world because men don't know how to talk. Men don't know how to communicate truth transparently. What is transparency? Transparency is different from vulnerability. Transparency is, as a human being, I observe and I see danger and I say this is dangerous and it could hurt somebody. And then you communicate that this could hurt someone, this could hurt me. Or you say, well, I've gone through what I've gone through, not through a fault of my own, I am hurt, I need to heal. So because I need to heal, then let me go through the process of healing so that I can be whole. I'm not judging. Vulnerability, unfortunately, oftentimes has got a strong connotation of judgment. Because vulnerability in itself has that word of that's called weakness, which oftentimes is associated with judgment. There's that mental tone. But men need to learn how to be transparent. And transparency is that, listen, I am going through stuff just like everybody else. I do need help every now and then. Can you be able to help me? I'm struggling with this. Can you show me how to get it done? I need to go do this. Do you know who else can be able to help me? If we start to do that, start to communicate like that, start to collaborate like that, then we are far away. We are far along in building the kind of men, societies, environments, kind of godly men in the church that the church needs to be able to impact communities that we are part of. We communicate for purpose. We communicate also for expressing our limitations, our pain. We communicate to express also our joy, our comforts, our pleasures. It's so good to hear somebody says, I'm so happy today. And we all want to know, why are you happy, man? We want to be happy with you. Give us what you're taking. And then you say why you're happy. You say, I'm so sad today. Why are you sad? How can we help? I'm sad because of what happened. I have a plan today. What is the plan? Well, this is the plan that I had. Okay. How can we help you? What do you need? A lot of times we're not able to get out of the situations that we find ourselves in as men because we don't talk to anybody. Nobody knows we are. And you know what, to be honest with you, to be very frank, oftentimes TD Jakes said this statement once that I never forgot. I was listening to this YouTube video, which I'll send actually, where he speaks with Miles Monroe, where they talk about how the world, or even the female, he said the female ear does not hear the frequency of the man's cry. It's like, whoa. Female ear does not hear the frequency of a man's cry. And I realized it's not even just it's not just the female ear, but actually it's the world. The world does not want to hear a man cry. And going back to the opening, why is that? Because we have an enemy. His name is the devil. And he wants to suppress and to oppress who we represent, the authority that we represent, the leadership that we represent, the vessels of communication that we are for God, as directors, as facilitators, as protectors, as providers, as guiders, as strength. So there is an attack. And a big part of that is to make sure that the man does not open his mouth. And so many of us have taken the bait. And we have accepted it. And what that does, unfortunately, is that then it creates a lot of opportunity for opportunists, the cult leaders of this world, the deceptive politicians of this world, the opportunistic community leaders of this world, the loud voices of dissension and confusion and violence. People are complaining about certain politicians and the way they speak. Well, the reason why they're so loud is because there aren't enough of us that are speaking up out there. And most of us don't speak up because we don't know what to say, how to say the things we say, because we're not so eloquent. I'm going to close with this. The ability to communicate is natural. It only becomes a skill when we develop it. Communication is not necessarily in itself a skill. It's a natural ability that we are born inherently with. But it only becomes a skill when we develop it. And then lastly, it becomes a tool when we use it for a specific purpose. It becomes a tool when we do what? We use it for a specific purpose. Unfortunately, that still remains true. We still communicate for a specific purpose. But unfortunately, because of we don't even know sometimes what that purpose is, then we say things that we regret. Because we don't know what is using, what is guiding, what is leading, what we want to say. One of the reasons why we don't know why that is the case is because we don't know what we're feeling. We cannot talk about what we're feeling. We don't unpack what we're feeling. Therefore, the emotions contribute to the process of communication, of what we're communicating, and then affect the outcome of our words. Then we're swearing. Then we're insulting. Then we're dominating. And then you sit back by yourself, you're thinking, man, I'm so embarrassing. But because you cannot accept and trust that you're embarrassing, then we suppress it again. No, I'm being mad. I'm not embarrassing. I'm being mad. I got to show them. They cannot disrespect me like that. In some environments, people get killed for looking at other men. In some environments, people get killed for even accidentally making a move on another man's woman. So, I think what I'll do for now, I think for now we can just wrap that up, and then we can just have just discussions about that. Amen. Amen. All right. Amen.